Okay, turn it. Okay, good. Okay, now I've got the bolts off. This should just lift right out. There we are. There's that coil pack assembly, then we'll take the rocker arm cover off. These are the new lifters. I got two for cylinder 4. I'm going to do them both. I guess I could have done the other two as well, but like I said, it's an old engine and I don't want to spend a ton of money on it. They're only about $50 each, so it would have been another $100. Realistically, it would have been better to do all of the lifters, but that would include a whole other head, another head gasket, and all the product and labor that comes with that. And you know what? Let's just get this thing working. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two lifters. I'm going to fill these little bags up with oil to let them soak while we're finishing the rest. I want to just soak them in oil so that they have oil penetrated within the mechanism there. All right, rocker arm covers off next. Here are 4 little bolts that have to come off, and we're going to do that right now. Okay, now these bolts are a little smaller because why would you make them all the same size, right? These are 8 mils. We're just going to take off the 4 bolts and then pull off the rocker. Okay, this comes off like that. There's your rocker arm. Now we got to pull off those. Before we get at the rocker arms, let's get this exhaust manifold out of here, and we've got to remove this dipstick tube from the head as well. Please pull it back. So I've got a 13mm socket for the exhaust bolts. I squirted them a little bit with some liquid wrench penetrating oil just to make sure that I wasn't going to have any trouble pulling them off. They look pretty rusty. I'm going to give that a shot right now. We've got, you can see, a couple per cylinder, so that would be 8 on this side, plus that bolt for the dipstick tube. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'll leave the camera running while I'm doing this. Let's get this heat shield out of the way. It's kind of falling off anyways. We'll try and fix that. Okay, so you can see the exhaust manifold is now off. I don't think it hit any of the spark plugs or anything on the way by, so that's good. I'll check that once the head's off. So I could have pulled the plugs out, but you know, didn't seem necessary. Okay, so next are the rocker arm bolts. I'm going to start from the front to work my way to the back. I've labeled a bunch of little plastic containers here, so we have to keep these. We're going to pull off the rocker arm. We're going to pull off the push rod, which is just underneath here, and we're going to pull off the little pivot clip. I'll start. Now these are torqued to 22 foot-pounds, so they're going to take a little bit of love to get them off. There we go. There's one. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Once you got it loose, just pull it out. Make sure you got the whole thing with you. Okay. There's the push rod. Okay, now keep those all separate. So this is going to be cylinder 2, number 1. I think it's intake, but it's called it 1 and 2. Front and okay, you can see. Slowly get. Okay, so you can see how I've got my parts sorted out here. Now let's just remove this. It only goes one way. So. Next we have to remove this coolant air bleed pipe. I'm only doing 1 cylinder, but I'm going to have to take it off on both because it's a rigid pipe and I'm not going to take the chance of breaking it. You're going to have to replace those gaskets. They're little O-rings. think we're going to need 4 of them altogether. This is also going to be a 10mm socket. Just remove. And the other side, same thing. And just lift straight up. And here you see the little O-rings that you're going to need, okay? I'll try to get a full list of all the part numbers for you. So I'm starting, and you can see I'm doing this in sequence here. Alright, start in the middle and sort of spiral your way out and do the ones at the top from the middle out. So I'm doing them just a quarter turn with the breaker bar until they're finger loosenable. Okay, and do that and continue doing that. So just follow that pattern and go back and forth. What I've done, you'll see I have used a wooden handled hammer. I don't want to damage anything. I very carefully pried the exhaust manifold back so I had enough space to access those head bolts. Alright, okay, so I have taken the head off. Basically it took me about an hour. I went through and meticulously loosened those bolts off a quarter turn at a time, using a 15mm socket and a 10mm socket for the bolts at the top. Going from 1 to 15 in this pattern right here. You can see that somehow. And you can see that I've removed the baskets or the lifter holders for number 2 and number 4. I'll pull those lifters out and put them back in the baskets for number 2. And you can see number 4 lifter. This was the one that was working, I'm assuming intake. And this was the exhaust, or the one that wasn't. And you can see how it's collapsed and come apart. Here I've got the head off. What I've done is sprayed some gasket remover on there. I'm just using this cheap little plastic drywall knife. It's plastic and I don't want to take a chance at scratching, marking the heads. And I'll do the same thing here. I'm also going to run a tap very carefully through all those head bolt holes. It's a metric 2.0. Check the bolts on the top, or on the main bolts. The top ones I haven't checked yet. Not that hard to figure out. Camera died, so I missed the lifter installation. Soak the lifters in fresh engine oil for about 30 minutes. Line up the AFM lifters in the guide's AFM holes aligned with the slot. The hole in the side of the lifter will face the block when installed correctly. The normal lifters also line up with their flat edge in the guide. The rollers should all be perpendicular to the guide along its length. The lifter rollers should all be parallel to one another. Place the guide in the block and torque the guide bolts to 106 inch-pounds. Okay, so after cleaning the head, I ended up just using 2 bolts at the top. You can see those are 2 old bolts at the top to line up the gasket, because there were no dowels on the engine to line up the gasket. That would have been so much easier. It was just a flat surface. So I used 2 old bolts just to line up the gasket and get it on. And now I'm installing the new head bolts. You have to use new bolts. You can't use the old ones. It won't work. At least it won't work well. You will be very mad. Okay, so get new bolts, and we're going to put those in and then torque them in the... Okay, alright. I've gone ahead and installed all the head bolts, just basically hand tight. And now I'm going to set a torque wrench to 22 foot-pounds and start from number 1, work my way out, and do the first 10 large, I guess 11mm bolts. And it's a 3-step process. You first of all torque it to 22 foot-pounds, and then you have to use an angle torque gauge, go around and in order to torque them all to 90 degrees, and then go back and do an additional 70 degrees. So we're gonna do the first step now. Okay, so we've gone to 22 foot-pounds on all of those 10 main head bolts. The next step is to do a 90 degree. So we use one of these on our torque wrench. I've never used one before, so see how it works. what we do is we're going to torque it through, and the first one's going to get to 90, and we do this on every bolt, and then the next time around we set it back to 0 and we go to 70. I'll try it. It's actually pretty straightforward. I'm going to see if I can get you set up here so you can watch me do one. So all we have to do is we take this back to 0, and we're doing number 3 now. Okay, so I'm going to get this on the bolt. Once it's on the bolt, all I have to do is hold this thing. I just keep cranking it until I get to 90. And once you've gone through that for all the bolts, we're doing 90 right now. Once you get all 10 of these done at 90, you have to go back and do them at 70. Then we're just torquing these top head bolts down to 22 foot-pounds. And that's it for the head. Coolant bleed line going back on. 106 inch-pounds for that. And don't forget to change the 2 O-rings on there. There's no ring on each. Put a little bit of oil in each push rod at the bottom end. Make sure that they're in good shape. Roll them across a sheet of glass or something to make sure they're not warped or bent. I ordered an extra one just in case, but didn't end up needing it. So push rods go in, and then just loosely put the rocker arms back on in the same order you took. So we'll start with the exhaust manifold now. Got the gasket behind there. I've got 1 bolt started, and we're going to just ease it in place. I'm going to get a few started, get them all started, and then we'll tighten them down and torque them up.